November 26, 1944. A Messerschmitt Me-262 sits on a runway at Achmer Airfield near Osnabrück, Germany. The engines are spooled up. Turbojets, the first operational jet fighter in history, capable of 540 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter. The pilot, Oberleutnant Franz Schall, sits in the cockpit, ready, and then nothing. The engines shut down. The mission is cancelled. Why? Because there's no fuel. The fuel trucks are empty. The tanks are empty. The entire airfield has maybe enough fuel for 3 aircraft. 3. And there are 30 Me-262s sitting on this runway. 30 revolutionary jet fighters. The most advanced aircraft in the world. Grounded because Germany, in November 1944, is running out of fuel. And this scene, this absurd, tragic scene, is happening all over Germany. Every day. The future of aviation sitting idle because the present has no gasoline. Let me tell you about a number. 540 miles per hour. In 1944, that was science fiction. Allied fighters, the best ones, the P-51 Mustang, the Spitfire Mark 14, topped out at around 440 miles per hour. The Me-262 was 100 miles per hour faster. 100. That's not an incremental improvement. That's a generational leap. And in air combat, speed is life. If you're faster, you control the engagement. You decide when to fight, when to run. The enemy can't catch you, can't force you into combat. And if you're 100 miles per hour faster, you're untouchable, in theory. In 1944, Germany had approximately 1,400 Me-262s, 1,400 jet fighters, and the Allies had 0. But Germany also had almost no fuel. And a jet fighter without fuel is just an expensive lawn ornament. Here's the paradox. Germany lost World War II decisively, and yet German technology, in some areas, was years ahead of everyone else. Jet engines, rockets, guided missiles, infrared optics, advanced submarines. The Allies didn't have this technology. Not in 1944, not in 1945. Some of it they wouldn't have until the 1950s. Germany was fighting with weapons from the future and losing with weapons from the past. How does that happen? How does the side with better technology lose? The answer is, technology doesn't win wars. Logistics wins wars. Strategy wins wars. And Germany, by 1944, had neither. Let's go back to the beginning. 1938. German engineers at Heinkel are experimenting with jet propulsion, turbojet engines. This isn't new science. Frank Whittle in Britain had patented a turbojet design in 1930. But nobody built it. Nobody thought it was practical. Too complex, too expensive. But the Germans, they're interested. Because Germany has a problem. A strategic problem. Germany doesn't have enough oil, doesn't have domestic oil production, imports most of its fuel. And if war comes, those imports will be cut off. So Germany needs engines that are fuel efficient, or engines that can run on synthetic fuel. And jet engines, theoretically, can do both. August 27th, 1939. The Heinkel He 178 makes its first flight, the world's first jet aircraft, powered by a single turbojet engine. It flies, successfully. And the German Air Ministry watches, interested, but not convinced. Because the He 178 is slow, barely faster than piston engine fighters. The engine is unreliable, and it uses a lot of fuel. So the Air Ministry says, interesting but not ready. Keep working on it. And Heinkel does. And so does Messerschmitt, and BMW, and Junkers, multiple companies competing, developing jet engine technology. And by 1942, they're making progress, real progress. Now, let me tell you about Willy Messerschmitt, aircraft designer, brilliant, arrogant. And in 1942, he's designing a jet fighter, the Me-262, twin engine, sleek, fast, And when the prototypes fly in July 1942, they're impressive, really impressive. Top speed over 500 miles per hour. Rate of climb better than any piston fighter. Range adequate. Armament 4 30mm cannons. Devastating firepower. This is the future. And German test pilots report back enthusiastically. This aircraft is revolutionary. It will dominate the skies. Germany needs to build it, now, in large numbers. And the Luftwaffe agrees, orders it into production, plans to build thousands. Replace all piston fighters with jets. And if that had happened, if Germany had committed to the Me-262 in 1942, the air war would have been very different. But that's not what happened. November 1943. Adolf Hitler visits the Messerschmitt factory, sees the Me-262, watches it fly, and he's impressed. But then he asks a question. Can this aircraft carry bombs? Messerschmitt hesitates, says, yes, technically, it can carry up to 1,000 kilograms of bombs, but it's designed as a fighter, not a bomber. And using it as a bomber would compromise its performance, its speed, its... Hitler interrupts. I want it as a bomber, a fast bomber, to strike Allied invasion forces. Messerschmitt tries to explain. The Me-262 is a fighter. It's designed to shoot down enemy bombers, to defend Germany. If you use it as a bomber, you're wasting, Hitler interrupts again. I want it as a bomber. That's an order. And that's it. That's the moment the Me-262 program gets derailed, because Hitler, who understands nothing about aviation, who has no technical expertise, decides unilaterally that Germany's revolutionary jet fighter will be used as a bomber. And the Luftwaffe tries to push back, argues, explains, shows data. Hitler doesn't care, orders the Me-262 to be reconfigured as a bomber. And that takes time, months, engineering changes, testing. And while that's happening, production slows. Deliveries are delayed, and Allied bombers continue destroying German cities, unopposed. Let me tell you about Hermann Göring, Reichsmarschall, commander of the Luftwaffe, and by 1944, he's desperate. The Luftwaffe is being destroyed. Allied bombers, escorted by long-range fighters, are hitting Germany around the clock. Daylight raids by Americans, night raids by British, and German piston fighters can't stop them. They try, they fight. But the Americans have P-51 Mustangs, long range, well armed, and escorting the bombers all the way to target and back. German pilots are dying, aircraft are being lost faster than they can be replaced, and Göring knows the only thing that can change this is the Me-262, as a fighter, not as a bomber. So Göring goes to Hitler, begs him, pleads, says, Mein Führer, we're losing the air war. We need the Me-262 as a fighter. It's our only hope, please. Hitler refuses, says the Me-262 will be a bomber. Göring tries again. Hitler threatens to have him arrested, and that's the end of the discussion. So the Me-262 enters service in July 1944 as a fighter bomber, carrying bombs, flying ground attack missions, and it's mediocre, because a fighter optimized for speed and maneuverability makes a terrible bomber. It can't carry much payload, can't hit targets accurately at high speed, and using it in ground attack exposes it to anti-aircraft fire, which is deadly. Because the Me-262, like all early jets, is fragile. The engines are temperamental. One hit from flak and the engine fails, or catches fire, or explodes, and the aircraft is done. So Me-262s are being lost in ground attack missions they shouldn't be flying, while Allied bombers continue hammering Germany. And Luftwaffe pilots, watching this, are furious. We have the aircraft that could stop the bombers, and we're wasting it dropping bombs on tanks. September 1944. Finally, Hitler relents, authorizes the Me-262 to be used as a fighter, and the Luftwaffe immediately forms jet fighter units, Jagdverband 44, Kommando Nowotny, elite units, experienced pilots, and they start flying combat missions, intercepting Allied bomber formations, and the results are spectacular. The Me-262 is devastating. It's fast. Too fast for Allied fighters to catch. It climbs quickly, attacks the bombers. 4 30mm cannons. A 2-second burst is enough. A bomber explodes, or catches fire, or breaks apart, and the Me-262 zooms away. Allied escorts try to engage, can't catch it. The Me-262 pilot climbs, resets, attacks again, and Allied bomber crews, they're terrified. They've been flying missions for months, dealing with German piston fighters, flak. It's dangerous, but manageable. The Me-262 is different. It appears out of nowhere, attacks, disappears, and there's nothing they can do. They can't outrun it, can't outmaneuver it. They just hope it doesn't target them. Let me tell you about November 2nd, 1944. A formation of 300 B-17 bombers is attacking Merseburg, Germany. Oil refineries, critical target, and the Americans know it's going to be bad. Heavy flak, determined fighter opposition. They're right. German fighters attack. FW-190s, BF-109s, standard piston fighters. The American escorts, P-51s, engage. It's a chaotic battle. And then something new appears. Me-262s, 6 of them, from Commando Nowotny, led by Major Walter Nowotny himself. Ace. 258 confirmed victories, one of the best, and Nowotny leads his jets into the bomber formation. The Me-262s are traveling at over 500 miles per hour. The bombers at 180. The speed difference is insane. Nowotny closes, fires. A B-17 explodes, breaks apart. Nowotny zooms past, climbs, turns, attacks again. Another B-17, hit, burning, falling. The other Me-262s do the same. In less than 5 minutes, the 6 Me-262s shoot down. 11 bombers, 11, and then they're gone, out of ammunition, heading back to base. The American escorts never got a shot, never even got close, and the bomber crews, the ones who survived, report back. We're facing something new, something we can't fight. But here's the thing. That mission, that success, it didn't matter, because Nowotny, returning to base, his Me-262 is damaged. Engine trouble, he's losing speed, altitude, and American P-51s, they're in the area, patrolling, looking for damaged German aircraft. They spot Nowotny, losing altitude, slow, vulnerable. They attack. Nowotny tries to evade, can't. His aircraft is too damaged. The P-51s fire, hit him. Nowotny's Me-262 crashes, explodes, he's dead. One of Germany's best pilots, flying Germany's best aircraft, killed, not in combat, but returning to base. Because the Me-262, for all its speed and firepower, has weaknesses, and the Allies are learning to exploit them. Let me tell you about those weaknesses. First, the engines, the Junkers Jumo 004 turbojets. Revolutionary, but unreliable. They have a service life of 10 to 25 hours. 10 to 25 hours before they need to be replaced. For comparison, a piston engine like the one in a P-51 can run for hundreds of hours. The Me-262 engines, they overheat, they flame out, they seize up, and replacing them is time-consuming, requires specialized tools, trained mechanics, and Germany, in late 1944, doesn't have enough of either. Second, fuel. The Me-262 engines run on J2 fuel, a special synthetic fuel, kerosene-based, and Germany is producing it in refineries. But those refineries are being bombed, constantly, by Allied bombers. The same bombers the Me-262 is supposed to stop, and every time a refinery is hit, fuel production drops. And by late 1944, Germany is producing maybe 30% of the fuel it needs. Maybe. So Me-262s sit on runways, engines ready, pilots ready, no fuel, can't fly, can't fight, can't do anything. Third, takeoff and landing. The Me-262 is fast in the air, but on takeoff and landing, it's slow, vulnerable, and Allied pilots figure this out. they start patrolling near German airfields. Waiting. When an Me-262 takes off or lands, the Allies attack, and the Me-262 can't defend itself. It's slow, no energy, easy target. American pilots call it rat catching, waiting near the hole. And it works. Dozens of Me-262s are destroyed, not in combat, but on takeoff or landing. And German commanders try to counter this, build longer runways, add flak defences. Doesn't matter. The Allies adapt faster than Germany can respond. Now, let me tell you about Adolf Galland, Luftwaffe general, fighter ace. 300 confirmed victories, and by late 1944, Galland is advocating for something radical. Stop all other fighter production, build only Me-262s, thousands of them, form entire wings of jet fighters, overwhelm the Allies with speed and firepower. It's a good plan, a desperate plan, but good. And if Germany had committed to it in, say, 1943, it might have worked. But it's late 1944 now, and Germany doesn't have the resources. The factories are being bombed, the supply lines are disrupted, the fuel is gone, and even if they could build thousands of Me-262s, they don't have enough pilots. Don't have enough fuel, don't have time. Galland tries anyway, convinces Göring, gets authorization, forms Jagdverband 44, an elite jet fighter unit, veteran pilots, the best of the best, and they fly Me-262s exclusively. And for a few months, JV-44 is effective, really effective. They shoot down dozens of Allied bombers, protect German cities, but it's not enough, because dozens isn't hundreds, and the Allies are sending thousands of bombers every day. The math doesn't work, Germany is losing, and JV-44, for all its skill and technology, can't change that. Let me tell you about fuel again, because this is the story. This is why the Me-262, for all its potential, didn't change the war. Germany's synthetic fuel production in 1944, January, producing about 90,000 tons per month. Not enough, but manageable. May, after Allied bombing intensifies, down to 50,000 tons, still not enough. September, down to 20,000 tons. Critical shortage. December, down to 5,000 tons. Catastrophic. And the Me-262, it consumes fuel. A lot of fuel. A single mission, takeoff to landing, burns through maybe 1,500 litres. 1,500, that's almost 400 gallons for one mission, one aircraft. And Germany has maybe a few hundred operational Me-262s by late 1944. Each one needs fuel. Multiply that out, it's impossible. The fuel isn't there, so aircraft sit, grounded, and the Allies keep bombing, destroying more refineries, making the problem worse. Here's the irony. The Allies knew about the Me-262, had intelligence reports, knew it was a threat, and they targeted it. Not the aircraft. They couldn't. The Me-262s were too fast, but they targeted the infrastructure, the factories, the airfields, the refineries, especially the refineries, because the Allies understood something Germany's leadership didn't. You don't need to destroy the weapon. You destroy its supply chain. And without fuel, the Me-262 is irrelevant. So the Allies bombed Luna, bombed Blechhammer, bombed every synthetic fuel plant they could find, and Germany couldn't stop them, because stopping them required fighters, and fighters required fuel, which was being bombed. It was a death spiral, and Germany couldn't escape it. Let me tell you about January 1945. The war is almost over, Germany is collapsing, and the Luftwaffe has maybe 200 operational Me-262s. 200. The most advanced fighters in the world, and they're flying maybe 10 sorties per day. Total, 10, because there's no fuel. Pilots are sitting in ready rooms, waiting, hoping for fuel deliveries. That never come. And American and British bombers are overhead. Every day, thousands of them, destroying what's left of German industry, German cities, German infrastructure. And the Me-262s, these revolutionary aircraft, sit on the ground. Useless. Because there's no fuel. And here's what makes this even more tragic. The Me-262 pilots, the ones who do fly, they're effective, really effective. In the last months of the war, Me-262 units achieve kill ratios of 5-1, sometimes higher. For every Me-262 lost, they shoot down 5 Allied aircraft. That's impressive. That's what happens when you have technological superiority. But it doesn't matter, because 5-1 isn't enough. The Allies can afford losses, Germany can't. And more importantly, the Me-262s aren't flying enough missions. 10 sorties per day, against thousands of Allied aircraft. It's meaningless, a drop in the ocean. Let me tell you about April 1945. Berlin is surrounded. Soviet forces are closing in. The war is days from ending. And at München-Riem airfield, there are maybe 50 Me-262s, fueled, armed, ready, and the order comes down. Destroy them. Don't let them fall into Soviet hands. So German ground crews, they drain the fuel, disable the engines, set the aircraft on fire. 50 Me-262s, the future of aviation, burning, because Germany lost. And there's no point in preserving them. The war is over. And the Me-262, the aircraft that was supposed to change everything, ends the war as it spent most of it, on the ground, not flying. Now, let's talk about what could have been, because this is important. If Germany had committed to the Me-262 earlier, if Hitler hadn't interfered, if they'd prioritized it as a fighter from the beginning, if they'd protected their fuel production, if, the Me-262 could have been a game changer. Imagine, late 1943, Germany has 500 operational Me-262s, defending German airspace. Allied bombers would have faced catastrophic losses. The daylight bombing campaign might have been unsustainable. The Allies might have had to change strategy, delay operations, and that extra time, it might have allowed Germany to, what? Develop nuclear weapons, build more V-2 rockets, strengthen defenses. Would it have changed the outcome? Probably not. Germany was facing the Soviet Union in the east, the Americans and British in the west. The industrial capacity of the Allies was overwhelming. Germany couldn't win, but the Me-262, used properly, could have prolonged the war, made it bloodier, more costly, and maybe, just maybe, forced the Allies to negotiate. That's what Hitler hoped for. That's why he wanted wonder weapons. But hope isn't strategy, and technology isn't logistics. Let me tell you about the aftermath. The war ends, May 1945, and the Allies capture dozens of Me-262s, intact, or mostly intact. They ship them to the United States, to Britain, to the Soviet Union, and they study them, reverse engineer them, learn from them, and what they find is the Me-262 is extraordinary. The engines, the aerodynamics, the design, it's all brilliant, years ahead of anything the Allies have, and the Allies incorporate those lessons into their own jet programs, the American F-86 Sabre, the Soviet MiG-15, the British Meteor improvements, all influenced by the Me-262. German engineers are brought to America, to the Soviet Union, Operation Paperclip. They work on American jets, Soviet jets, and the knowledge, the technology, it spreads. The Me-262 didn't win the war for Germany, but it did shape the future of jet aviation for everyone. Here's the legacy. The Me-262 was the first operational jet fighter, the first to see combat, the first to prove that jets were the future. And in that sense, it succeeded. It showed what was possible, but it also showed what happens when you have technology without strategy, innovation without resources, brilliance without logistics. The Me-262 was a masterpiece, an engineering triumph, and a strategic failure. Because in war, having the best weapon doesn't matter if you can't field it, can't fuel it, can't support it. And that's the lesson. Germany built the first jet fighter in 1944, and it changed nothing. Because they had no fuel to fly it, had no infrastructure to support it. had no strategy to use it properly, and had leadership that interfered with every decision. Hitler insisted it be a bomber. That delayed production by months. Then, when it finally entered service as a fighter, there was no fuel, and by then, the war was already lost. The Me-262 was a solution to a problem Germany no longer had time to solve, and thousands of German pilots, good pilots, experienced pilots, sat in cockpits of aircraft that couldn't fly. Because the fuel tanks were empty, and the refineries were bombed, and the supply lines were cut, and Germany was out of time. 540 miles per hour, 4 30mm cannons, revolutionary design, and it sat on the ground, because logistics beats technology, every time, and Germany learned that lesson, the hard way. With the most advanced fighter in the world, grounded, useless, a monument to what could have been, if only there had been fuel.